My current role is consultant social worker, which focuses on practice support and development. So as well as being a social worker, I'm a published author and poet, and I love it when those two passions in my life can combine like this, really. So I wanted to start off by reading out one of my poems that was published last year by National Principal Children's and Families Social Worker Network. And this just really says in a nutshell what social work means to me. So this poem is actually called What Social Work Means to Me. Social work means passion. It means loving what you do. It's knowing certain outcomes could be influenced by you. It's lifting people's burdens, it's compassion and it's care. It's holding in emotions when the children need you there. A statutory duty, endless paperwork and forms. At times it's like you're going through the calm before the storm. It's learning not to take offence if people shout abuse. It's understanding reasons why they do the things they do. It's coaching, it's supporting, it's empowering, it's hard. It's being human, showing care and positive regard. It's one piece of a puzzle that fits all around a child. It's being there persistently to go that extra mile. Social work's intrusive, it is other people's lives, but rewarding and a privilege to help a child to thrive. Social work means change, supporting others to achieve. Social work is needed work. It's simply part of me. Okay, so I've got 3 more poems to share with you today, but these are pre-recorded into a video format. The first poem I'm going to share is called I Lack Nothing. This poem was inspired by a number of children in care and care leavers that I've worked with over the years. One thing I'm very passionate about is the need to understand that all behaviour is communication, and there is often a lot going on underneath the surface, especially for those who've experienced trauma. Through the poem, I wanted to convey some specific messages about how it can feel for a young person living with domestic abuse and entering the care system, being separated from their family and then having to live with trauma whilst trying to build a new life. This particular poem later formed part of South Gloucestershire's fostering recruitment campaign, and one of our own care leavers read some of the lines out as a voiceover for Sky TV advert. He was thrilled to do this as the poem resonated with him a lot, and it was great that he could be a part of that. The second poem I'll be sharing is called Behind a Closed Door. One of the areas of practice that I lead on in South Gloucestershire is domestic abuse, and I, like many, am so aware of the impact that the pandemic and lockdowns have had on victims suffering from domestic abuse. I wrote this poem in collaboration with NextLink, Domestic Abuse Support Services, and with Craft Training and Development Consultancy to try and raise awareness of the issue and reach out to people who
if you're there, just tell her to bring them there.
Sorry, there's somebody.
If
Sorry, should I go again now? Okay. Hopefully you can all hear me now. So the final poem that I'll be sharing is called A Whole World Revival. I wrote that poem in response to the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. My hope and aim was to raise awareness of racism and invite people around the world to demonstrate compassion, care and unity. So, Kate, are you okay to start sharing the poems now, please?
Yes, of course. And just a quick reminder, if everyone can turn their microphones off, please. Thank you. What?
This poem's called I Lack Nothing. This isn't my own personal story. It isn't about me at all. This was inspired by children in care and care leavers, so I read this on behalf of them. Apparently I'm known as lack, was sin and then CP. There are many different ways that people try defining me. They say I could be challenging because often I'd kick off. But you don't feel the pain I feel or know how much I've lost. My life's a roller coaster and that's how it's always been. You'd never understand the loss and sadness that I've seen. Yes, my mum enjoyed a smoke, she also liked her booze. But I say, how dare all of you for asking her to choose? I know now that I'm older, she had stuff to deal with too. She needed help to keep us, but instead you let her lose. Dad left when she was pregnant. I don't even know his name. Then Mike arrived, and from that day, things never were the same. My mum was beaten black and blue. She said the drink would help. It blocked out just a little pain. She tried to save herself. No one even noticed till the day I crossed his path. I went to school with blackened eyes. You saw the aftermath. Then all at once a broken heart when intervention came. Our family was torn apart and I was left with shame. My name was changed to Sin, and then it soon became CP. Apparently my mum was not prioritising me. They said she had to leave him, stop all contact right away, but never did they know the evil things that he would say. Mum felt that she was doing right to deal with it alone, as he said he'd kill us all the day she kicked him out our home. But then one day I lost it all, my home, my name, my life. I changed to lack, no going back. The pain cut like a knife. A black bag of belongings, that was all that I could take. Never in my years had I imagined this was fate. I wonder if you've ever lost your family, your home, had to live with total strangers, left to deal with it alone. Of course, I'll just expect that you will settle right away. You'll be polite, you'll sleep at night and go to school each day. But I'd love to see you do that and pretend it's all right. I have to say I coped my way. I'd cry, I'd scream, I'd fight. When I ran away or punched a wall or broke a thing or two, never once did someone ask me, why do you do the things you do? Of course, I got expelled a lot, too challenging to teach. I'm sure that people felt success was not within my reach. When other children bullied me, I smacked them, that is true. But when you live with violence, then it's what you learn to do. If only they had questioned why I fought, it wasn't pride. It's because every single bully triggered memories inside. I haven't mentioned yet that I was not an only child. On my long line list of losses was my baby brother Miles. Apparently no carer would accept to take us both, so he's somewhere in the country, and that loss, it hurts the most. But 7 placements later and I feel I am okay. It's still not always easy, but I make it through the day. And I want to give the message that I do deserve respect. I may have made mistakes at times when life was such a mess. So help me be the person that I know I can become. My future's not defined by my mistakes or by my mum. I am not just a lack child or a care leaver to be. I have a name, a history. I have a family. I've made it through the trauma and I'm never going back. So I ask you now to tell me, please, what is it that I lack?
This is the story of something extreme, rarely discussed and often unseen. For all it's a subject unspoken, taboo, we deny its existence. We don't see the truth. When the virus descended, it started a war, but there's another disease that I want to explore. In fact, I'm asking, no please, I implore, consider what happens behind a closed door. Because of corona, a lockdown commenced. We were distanced from family, removed from our friends. The risks were reduced, that's what everyone thought. But to some, the risk's greater behind their closed door. The danger I speak of is cruel like corona. It too has an evil and vicious persona. Controlling, coercive, degrading, a crime. Oppression, aggression, destroys over time. The virus presents a real threat, that is true, but the threat that I speak of is domestic abuse. Call-outs for help have increased by a third as victims try getting their voice to be heard, locked with abusers where no one can see, and yearning for safety, yet where can they flee? There's comfort for some with the self-isolation. To others, there's fear and it's clear trepidation. Imagine a life, 24/7, treading on eggshells and dodging aggression. There's no one to notice a bump or a bruise. Safety fades further with networks removed. And think of the children all living this life behind those closed doors who will hear when they cry. The people who usually make sure they're okay are locked in houses, restrictions in play. I'm thinking of teachers and doctors and friends, support from whom children have come to depend. Children hear all the shouting, children see all the tears, the fear of one moment will last through the years. Their journey in life is a dangerous path, unsure of the future and scared of the past. When someone who's frightening takes total control, consider the things they can seek to withhold. With no social meetups, there's FaceTime to use, but what if you ask and you're always refused? With Twitter and email and WhatsApp we're blessed, but if you can't have a phone, then there's no one to text. We relish the thought of our one walk a day, but to some, even that would be taken away. It's harder for victims to run and to hide when they can't leave their house and they can't go outside. We soon will emerge from this lockdown in place, but abusers will still use the virus as bait, telling their victim the risk's still unknown, so they mustn't go out and they must stay at home. Now I know that this message is so hard to hear, the pain and the suffering, the violence and fear. But just like Corona's a threat to our lives, some battle abuse every day to survive. It's my duty, my passion, my aim to express how important it is that this threat is addressed. So let's raise awareness, support those in need, help all of the people who need to be freed. Please don't get complacent or turn a blind eye. Be inquisitive, curious, nosy and wise. Check in with others and share your concerns. Help to enable a voice to be heard. And for any survivor or victim, please know that even through lockdown, you're never alone. There are services out there who truly can help. Don't suffer in silence. Find strength in yourself. The aim of this poem, can it ever be true? We must put an end to domestic abuse. So yes, with the virus we're fighting a war, but please think of the battles behind a closed door.
At Craft, our focus is relationships. For many of us, relationships are the most important part of our lives. They aren't, however, always easy. Particularly at the moment, whilst families are in lockdown together, things can get difficult. We can often take our frustrations out on those we love, our partners, our parents, and our children. When things get really bad, reach boiling point, or even boil over, it can be difficult to know what to do. But despite social distancing, there are strategies that can help. If you are a key worker supporting families who are behaving harmfully towards each other, Craft can help.
This is the story of something we've seen, a dangerous force that's invaded our streets, something so deadly, no mercy it shows. It leaves such destruction wherever it goes. Just like a predator hunts out its prey, attacking each obstacle put in its way. Like the sting of a bee or the bite of a snake, it happens so quickly, and then it's too late. Now life as we knew it has changed overnight. The world's grabbed its armour and set out to fight. You may think I'm speaking of COVID-19, a virus that's brought the whole world to its knees. But no, I'm using my words to convey how humanity's breaking. It pains me to say. Confusion, delusion means foregone conclusions. Forces combine to make nuclear fusions. This story I tell has been told over time. It is frightening, enlightening, yet no pantomime. There's no romance, no humour, no perfect life lesson. It's tense with suspense and leaves all the world guessing. This story's no fiction, it's honest and true. It's the realisation we're all living through. These next words I've written jump up off the page. They pull at my heartstrings and fill me with rage. Stigmatisation and discrimination, I cry out to God for the whole of creation. Harassment and prejudice, victimisation, of course it's a story of deep-rooted racism. Affliction, constriction and blatant damnation, I fall to my knees as I pray for our nations. So Corona descended and started a war, but it seems as a battle we need to fight more. I'd invite every person, in fact I implore you, examine your hearts and your thoughts. Are they pure? See, the world is in crisis, in conflict and pain. Will we really allow this injustice to reign? Let's choose our words wisely, be kind, show respect. Let's look to the future and all reconnect. Embrace all our difference. We must recognise it's not that which is causing the human divide. We have the ability to reach perfect unity, fight against racism, build herd immunity. Let's all change our future and learn from the past. We can't let this hatred and prejudice last. So let this time now be our realisation. Let's spread peace and joy to civilization. For the sake of mankind and for all our survival, let's make 2020 a whole world revival.
Powerful stuff there from Aimee. Thank you very, very much indeed for those poems and for sharing them with us today. Wonderful. And like I said at the beginning, there will be Q&A time for both our speakers at the end of this hour-long session. So now I'm going to hand over to Fiona Haywood, and she is at Wiltshire Council. She's going to introduce the material that I will be sharing on her behalf with you today. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you. Hello, Katrina. Excellent. Welcome to Wiltshire Social Care. I'm Principal Social Worker Fiona Haywood here in Wiltshire, and I'm delighted to introduce this work to you all. It's a journey in stages of the pandemic, I think, the ebbs and flows for our staff, our children and our young people. It includes worries, frustrations, humour, hope, and a sense of oneness, I think, overall. And I'd like to give a quick introduction to Katrina and Xenia, who are quite featured in this piece. Hello.
Hello, thank you very much. So I'm here with Zena, who's one of our young people who's currently a bit nervous and is hiding behind her coat. But she
Understandable.
Come on. Come
well
on.
done.
Okay, I'm just going to introduce Zena for you. So this lump here is Zena, and she wrote a really fantastic poem which actually won the Children's Services Poetry Competition.
It did.
It was fantastic. We wanted to say, look out for Zena's poem. I think it's one of the last ones.
It is.
And Zena will introduce a video which is called Reflections on a Pandemic, which was sort of a video of art and poetry put together by Wiltshire staff and children. Wasn't it, Zena? Yes, it was.
Thank you, Zena and Katrina. Thank you. Now over to you, and we'll shut up.
Mid-March 2020, we were sent home, arms laden with whatever we could carry. Computers, work chairs, phones. The international pandemic was firmly in the UK, and social care was sent home. To keep connected, various activities started, including full council quizzes, team check-ins, buddy systems. Senior management team coined each Friday Fun Day Fridays. In a bid to keep upbeat, they set staff challenges, get the baby pictures, grow seeds, send photographs of our feet. The one challenge which got the most responses was writing poetry about our COVID-19 experiences as the weeks unfolded into months and more months. And from here, the idea of a poetry book written by staff and children was born. We are delighted to show you our own personal account of Reflections on a Pandemic.
Reflections on a Pandemic by Wiltshire Children's Social Care.
How everything changes in the blink of an eye. New concepts, furlough, social distancing, lockdown and self-isolating. A new normal. It is certainly not business as usual. No hugging, no shopping, no seeing friends or family. More drinking. What are your plans for the weekend? I think I'll stay in. Staying in is the new going out. Teams meetings, not team meetings. Zoom parties, FaceTime fatigue. Some days it's just best to eat Nutella off the spoon, out of the jar. But more family time, more exercising, home at a sensible time, home all of the time. The joy of seeing people at a distance. A weekly rousing whoop, clap, gong and cheer of appreciation and gratitude. Respect for our key workers, at last. Picnics, talking, laughter, all outdoors. Less cars, peace and quiet, an explosion of nature. A reminder of what's really important, but how to keep hold of what we've learned.
But I now know my parents better, and them me. But I long to hug my grandmother. I know my neighbors now, yay! But only from a distance. I've thoroughly enjoyed the summer, but the winter not so much. I'm physically healthier, but not in my mind. But like the seasons, things will change.
Fear, sadness, separation. Hope, togetherness, anticipation. Change, synthesis, growth. Human connection. Doesn't make much sense. Maybe doesn't rhyme, but words that are poignant at this time.
A council employee in Trow was locked down with nowhere to go. She just sat at a desk in her pants and her vest and found herself feeling quite low. She lived all alone, you see, so going to work was quite key. She would meet lots of folk with whom she could joke and have a nice cup of tea. She then had a word or two and said, I ain't thought this through. I must get a grip, not sit around like a drip, but there's other stuff I could do. Walking to make me less fat, or get on Teams to be having a chat. Do a quiz, get on Zoom, do PE in my room, and my work-life balance will be back.
Chaos offers opportunity to respond in a variety of ways whilst isolating without despair.
Do your jeans feel tight? Are you struggling to write? Are you feeling very lonely? Is it really day or night? Are you shielding from the COVID or are you out there on front line? Do your jeans feel tight? Do your jeans feel tight? Have you shown tremendous might? You can do this job from home. Kids and schooling are all right. You're juggling with your conscience, but you're doing oh so well. Do your jeans feel tight? Yes, they do.
COVID Christmas. Will it be the same? The ingredients don't change. Turkey, roast potatoes and veg, flaming pudding, crackers and daft hats. Carols from kings, but no midnight mass. Who will you be with? In 3 bubbles, 2 or 1 or none? Some will be working in hospital, care home or emergency crews. Some will be dying in hospital, care home or with emergency crews. Wherever you are, whoever you are with, whatever you do, COVID means Christmas won't be the same for me or for you.
Enough, said the god of planet Earth, as she looked down across these plains in mirth, to the parched, burnt soils, the flooded grounds. What must I do? Human endeavour knows no bounds. I gave you humans land, I gave you forests and sands, and rivers flowing, and bountiful seas, and bread and fish and corn enough to feed. Yet, intent on destroying my kingdom you must, for it appears this human capitalist I cannot trust. So I reap you flood, fire and pestilence until you pause to consider your wanton ways, and only then might I consider you my cause to save.
Stay side by side, glide along the bottom, float along the top, aware of each other in arm's reach. Flatten your stroke, streamline your body, allow the water to hold you up. Distant, yet always connected, even while moving in opposite directions. Trust that this cruel game of virus chicken is in no way stronger than our connections. Patterns which run deeper than touch.
There once was a Shih Tzu called Otto, who lived by a peculiar motto. When people would call, he'd bark at them all, the joys of home working with doggos.
It's Friday, full English for my team in the cafe downstairs. Sauce from the fridge, no more. Instead, the view from my window, the leaves that budded in March are now turning to gold. Inhabited by birds whose songs enchanted in the peace of lockdown, sometimes into night. It has been strange working shielded, cocooned in my family. At last freedom for 2 weeks. Then COVID visited our house and now is gone. I long for normal, to see and hug friends and workmates, to mingle in the market. Now it begins again.
COVID stalks the world. Invisible corners lurks. Faces disappear. Living at work tough. People climb walls and ceilings. Hope waits in lobby.
Pa kontakt. Një hap më tutje, një hap më larg. Kur dalim në rrugë, kur dalim në park, po mbjellim frikë e po mbjellim terror. Njerëzia s'do shëtis më dorë për dorë. Një hap më tutje, një hap më larg. Po trishtojnë fëmijët, po ligështojnë çdo plak. Na duan të mbyllur, të burgosur edhe më mirë. Duan human robot dhe një bot shkretëtir.
A world without colour. A stranger calls at midnight, dressed in a rainbow way, puts every colour in a bag and carried them away. The swishing ocean bluebells on the sunshine hillside, the ice glassy wing of a dragonfly, the emerald sea release from a bright willow, the sparkling jay glistening green sea.
Lockdown life. Life is different, can't go out, can't play with friends, invisible danger all around doesn't feel real. Overcoming challenges, school is quiet, boring days and school days, can't see friends, reading, TV, sleep, repeat. COVID-19, what does it mean? Bubbles, testing, tracing, questions. Coming home, staying in, not too close, coloring cards, counting the days. Kites on the white horse, days out in the sun, caravan holidays, splashing in the waves, ice creams, park, rock pools, some days feel normal. Days, boring days, school days, walks. Inside again, science, science, science. Outside playing, walking, running, time is moving, exercise, cycling, racing, walks in the woods. Wearing masks, washing hands, being wary, hard to relax. New family, new house, new room, settling in, routines, fun, watching movies with my crazy sisters, going walks with my mum, cycling with my dad and racing him home. Now summer's done, memories stay, out the house, back to school, waiting to make sense of my lockdown life.
Thank you to everyone who has contributed to this wonderful project and to the many others who sent us their words of poetry and art over this COVID year. And thank you for listening from Wiltshire Social Care and our children.
Well, what a huge amount of material and wonderful thoughts shared in that second sequence there from Fiona and her colleagues and children in Wiltshire Council. So enormous amount of creative poetry and thoughts in the session. Wonderful stuff. So we're now going to open up the chat facility, which is down the right hand side of the screen in Teams, so that you can have a think about questions that you might have for Aimee or for Fiona about anything that you've seen and heard so far on this session. If you want to raise your hand and let us know that you have a question, that's okay as well. But I know Ian is in the background, the trusty moderator, looking at the questions that might have come in. Hello, back on camera again. Thanks, Ian. Do we have any questions for either Aimee or Fiona at this point? I think you've got your microphone on mute, Ian.
My apologies.
That's lovely, don't worry. It wouldn't be a complete session unless someone was on mute. I'd feel that there was something missing if it didn't happen, frankly. Any questions from anyone so far, or is it a good idea to hear from Aimee first around?
I'd like to ask Fiona a question, which might open up to other people. Then is that obviously a lot of the age group of the poetry writers and creative are quite young people, and it shows that obviously COVID has affected us all for lots of different reasons, and the children are very passionate about what they wrote. They can see from even the one in our garden working at home and tight jeans. It was me all over. I've tight my jeans out.
Yeah.
Did you get a lot of children wanting to participate?
Yeah, it was fascinating actually, because as we said at the beginning, there were lots of different approaches to the pandemic at the beginning, and it was writing that kind of it really resonated with people, and so we were really amazed by the articulation and the maturity actually of the children in the young people in the writing and the poetry, poetry and the artwork as well. It was quite incredible.
That's great, and it doesn't surprise me, Fiona, that you had people queuing up to participate. And thanks for getting the ball rolling, Ian. That was a really, really good question. Aimee,
I like the comment that was made earlier about that it felt like different experiences through the lockdown, and that I totally agree, because we did one in June. There was a publication for staff and children to come forward, and then I repeated it again in the autumn. so you could really see the sort of changing in mood and atmosphere and thinking as the poetry was written, and that really comes over, doesn't it?
Yes, and someone mentioned about this change of seasons in their material as well, didn't they? That's superb, and a wonderful insight as well. Before we look at any more questions coming in, Ian, I just want to go to Aimee. Aimee, can you tell us a little bit about the poems that you've shared beyond what you've already kindly told us? What was your reason for coming along and sharing them with us today?
I think it's to share, well, to raise awareness of some of the key issues that have impacted on so many people throughout the pandemic and lockdown. And, you know, it's become a lot worse for a lot of people, domestic abuse being one of those things, but also just the impact of children coming into care. I wanted to kind of raise the awareness of that really, and how it feels to them potentially. I've been writing a lot throughout the pandemic and lockdown. I think it's one of my go-to as well, really. Something that helps my own well-being. But at the beginning of lockdown, I challenged myself to write a poem a day and share it on social media. So it kind of grew into something much bigger than I expected, really. And I've been working with all sorts of charities and organisations such as Age UK, Next Link, Mind. I've written for lots of different causes. So it's just been brilliant, and that's what it's for, really. It's to kind of reach out to people, it's to support people, to tell people where they can go for help and support, and just try and create a sense of unity, I think, really.
Wonderful. And I noticed that there's someone in the chat that's asked politely, Aimee, but possibly Fiona as well, if you're happy for us to share your contact details today so that they can get in touch and find out more about the work that you've been doing along the lines of what you shared with today. Would you both be happy to do that?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Any more questions for Aimee or Fiona from the chat, Ian?
Yeah, there's a question from Flower Samuels. She put it in the chat, but I'll read it out. She's asked if you did the experience of writing poetry change the attitudes of the staff and children towards each other. So I suppose that's geared at Fiona, but Aimee, please feel free to jump in.
I wonder if Katrina might like to answer that one. Did the experience of writing poetry change the attitudes of staff and children towards each other? What do you think, Katrina and Zena? Are they there? Yeah, I think she is. There's definitely a KR there. No,
not to worry, not to worry. We have a bit of always have space for camera shy. That's fine.
I can say one thing, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. I think there's a fantastic sort of ability of in sense of empowerment and real sense of well-being. And for example, Zena did really well in this competition, as you know. And I think there's something about us taking part in things that are outside school, outside our sort of usual channels, and being really successful. And that really impacted on her education and her attitude to writing and reading as well. So I think it works on so many levels.
Yes, yes.
I would say from my point of view as well, in terms of, because I was sharing the voice, especially I Lack Nothing, was partly written by young people in care and care leavers, and that's now being used in training in South Gloucestershire, but by other local authorities as well. And I saw on Twitter the other day that one local authority, a young person, had re-recorded it, read it out herself, which was really powerful. And I think I've had lots of feedback that hearing from the young people themselves is just very powerful, isn't it, really, and gets those messages across in a whole different way. So
absolutely, yeah. It's from the horse's mouth, as they say, isn't it? And that's the most powerful voice of all. We do have another message in the chat box. Somebody has asked whether the Wiltshire poetry booklet is available elsewhere. We're not sending out materials that are broadcast in this program this week, but we are recording today, and today's film will be uploaded onto the Social Work England YouTube channel. But in terms of the booklet that Wiltshire shared, is that available anywhere, Fiona?
Yes, we do have a paper copy, and of course there's more poetry and artwork in there because we could only contain so much in this artwork. So yes, it could be.
Fabulous. I'm not surprised someone's asked, actually, given all the artwork and effort and love that's gone into it. There was a lot a lot there, wasn't there? And I think that the poetry booklet and the films, all very powerful material. Aimee, can you tell us a little bit about the imagery that you put to your poems? Another question.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was putting the videos together, I worked very closely with the agencies and with young people, so I was sharing them different examples of things to use. I mean, it's not sort of breaking any confidentiality or showing any identity, so they're all just free stock images that we used, but it was very much put together in collaboration with young people and with agencies and the local authority.
Thank you for that. And I'm just there are messages that are coming in thick and fast now for both of you. So if you can bear with me, it's quite hard to keep up with. We've had about 1 million hearts and thumbs up coming in from one of our many watchers today. And incidentally, we're fully booked on this session. We've got a lot of people on the line with us. Ian's probably in charge of the numbers and will be messaging me about head count. But the hearts and the thumbs ups are coming in, and the latest comment in the chat box says, what a fantastic interval in the day. It demonstrates how our young people can truly reflect the feelings of the day, whilst demonstrating how labels impact and affect our sense of self. Absolutely brilliant, and nice to hear positives from a forward-thinking local authority, and I'm sure that applies to both of you. So that's a really nice comment coming into the box from one of our attendees, so thank you for sending that in. Any more questions? Anyone want to make any more comment about the work that they've heard or seen today on the line? Oh, it looks like we do have another question actually. And this is a question that says, I hope there are more local authorities that will join in this form of interaction with our young people and children and families to help address the impact of corona, lockdown and all that entails. So does either of you want to speak a little bit about the impact of the COVID-19 situation and the awful year that we've all had on the material that you've shared? Fiona, do you want to say a quick word about that? Because it features heavily, doesn't it?
I think overall, when I look back at the kind of tones and themes, much of it is about missing our loved ones and our colleagues and dying to come back to the offices and reconnect with each other. And the other thing I'm amazed and proud to say is humour. There was overwhelming humour, and obviously we wanted a real a sense of many emotions in this piece, but actually in the book I would say the overriding themes are humour, actually, and I think that's such a quality that keeps us going, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's in the social work toolkit as well, isn't it?
Totally.
And Aimee, thoughts on sort of the very heavy subject matter that you covered, particularly around the COVID-19 situation, if you don't mind sharing your views on that.
I think I was just really keen to raise awareness of things that people might not all think about. Like, we all talk about how it's awful being isolated and stuck at home and in lockdown, but actually we have predominantly all of us got phones or laptops or FaceTime and things like that. But for a victim of domestic abuse, even those things are taken away quite a lot of the time. So it was sort of trying to make people think about those sorts of areas of life that it might not cross their mind, and just the importance of checking in with people, because I know even myself, a week could go by and then I realise actually I haven't been outside or I haven't spoke to anybody. But for those people that are in isolated and abusive relationships, it's so important that people around them check in on them and just check they're okay in the best ways they can. But one of my lead areas of practice is domestic abuse, so we've been working quite a lot on how we can get more support out there really and reach more people, albeit virtually a lot of the time, and also with our social workers, how they can make sure they're still doing those visits and still getting to see them and trying to get in the door where they can. So it's been really a hot topic. But I think the other thing that I thought about a lot in terms of pandemic is just we talk about not seeing our friends and family, but for our children in care who count so much on that contact with birth family, on that family time, and that's been stopped. That's like another layer all again for them really to have to deal with, and the trauma of that. So that's very fresh in my mind as well. I've been doing some online poetry workshops with children in care, and trying to help with their well-being really, and to support them during lockdown. And that's come up a lot, how much they're missing their family, and virtual contact for them is just not the same, you know, in so many ways. So it's affected a lot of people in a lot of ways, hasn't it, the pandemic?
Yes, it's omnipresent, isn't it? And it's really interesting to hear you elaborate in that way, particularly with a focus on home visits, which have been difficult, haven't they? Interestingly, slight subject jump back a few subjects and questions. Another request for the Wiltshire poetry book has just come in from somebody else who's on the call with us as well. So it's a very popular piece of material, Fiona. No pressure, but if you are sharing your contact details in the chat with us, or anyone on the call today, feel free to email Social Work Week, and we can get contact details to you from today's session as well.
Just jumping in on that, sorry, just
yes.
jumping in, Fiona. Have you thought about having any proper official publication of that? Because it's something what I've seen in bookstores before, where people have published it. Really? Some thought behind.
That would be amazing.
I think it would be a good big bestseller, personally. Really?
God, Terence, our CEO, would be delighted.
I just wondered if it's something you guys have thought about.
Thanks, Ian.
We have got another question in the chat box. We've been asked whether someone on the line is just wondering whether both speakers feel that the use of creative mediums like poetry, performing arts, and you know, with those that we support and work with in the world of social work, should be covered more in social work training, which is a really good question. Or maybe it is now, they're asking. It's a long time since they trained. I won't name that person that's written that in the chat, but that's the question. So thoughts on the use of creative writing and poetry for social work students. Aimee, if I can come to you first, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I mean, I'm passionate about poetry, so I would say yes, but I do think there's definitely a place for it. I know in South Gloucestershire we've got lots of wellbeing courses on online available at the moment, and some of that is right for right mind or something, right for wellbeing. So that's all around creative writing, taking space out of your day to do that. But you know, it's very, very widely promoted about reflective supervisions, and that's another part of my role really, to supervise newly qualified and students and social workers reflectively. So some of the cards and tools I use with them get them to use their words really, and to kind of talk about how they're feeling, what's going on in their heart, what's going on in their head, what theories and methods are underpinning their work. But there is a lot around feeling and being creative, so it can be really helpful actually. I don't know whether it's officially in the social work course, not that I'm aware of, but like I say, this whole lean towards reflective supervision is quite hot on the agenda as well at the moment, so it can help.
I totally agree. And from a therapeutic point of view, you know, we know so many of the art, well, all of them, don't we? Gardening, there's so much research around therapeutic activity in our mind. And I think there's something really great about writing, particularly for our children, that they can write in third person, they can write as someone else, they could be talking about themselves sort of metaphorically or through another means. And that's so therapeutic to be able to get your emotions out. So I definitely think there's definitely room for classes and groups for young people, definitely.
Thanks for that. And it's a related question that's come in from somebody else on the call as well. They're asking, do we know how much poetry is used, creative or creating poetry or reading, in direct social work practice? Aimee, have you come across many examples of that?
Not a great deal, in honesty. The only one that springs to mind is I'd written a poem around depression and anxiety and mental health, and I know one worker had shared that with a father that was struggling with those sorts of issues. But it's very on an individual basis, I think. I don't know how widely it's being used. Not a lot in South Gloucester that I'm aware of at the moment.
I agree. I think it's social work's very eclectic, isn't it? And I'm always constantly amazed at the creative, incredible ways that social workers, you know, relate to their children and get the child's voice. And I'm sure lots of people who've watched today, I'm sure they'll be getting ideas on how they can weave writing in, definitely. Or perhaps make it more formalised in the training. I'll talk to Bournemouth Uni next week.
Lovely.
We have with young people, actually, saying that we've done some group work with them around creative writing, which was I mean, some of the things, all of the stuff that they produced was amazing, actually. And one of the young people that I worked with, she's just had a poem published in the Principal Social Worker ebook, and it was, I think, was it Fiona that you said earlier about using imagery and metaphors and things like that, and she'd written a poem about 3 giraffes, and when I read it, I could just instantly tell she was talking about her and her brother and her sister, but it was her way of kind of getting that out, really, and speaking about how she was feeling and how she was missing them. And so yeah, it's a very good method to use.
Yeah, it's again, it's in the social work toolkit, isn't it? And depending on the work being undertaken, but interesting to hear your views on that. Conscious that we've got 5 minutes to go, we've got a couple more questions that have come in, but before I ask you both the questions, and they are for both of you, this is a quick reminder that before the session is over, there's a super quick survey that we'd be ever so grateful for you to complete. Ian's going to pop it in the chat box if it's not there already. It's just to tell us how you found today, what you enjoyed, just to give us some feedback. So if you could fill that out at the end, we'd be ever so grateful. So that's that bit done. Back to the questions.
And a copy of the survey from? I forgot to get it ready.
Oh, not to worry, Ian. I'll find it for you. I'll find it for you. Don't you worry. So back to the questions, and we have someone who's on the call saying that they're currently a social work student. There isn't an awful lot of creativity on their course, but fellow students have set up their own creative writing group, which is very impressive. So they've sort of tackled it head on, and they say that it's really helped them share and reflect on their practice, especially the things that they found difficult. Somebody else on the call has said that this poetry can be used as direct work with young children and families. So they're just they're augmenting what the two of you have already said. Actually, that it's a really good mechanism and approach in social work practice with children and families. And another social worker is also commenting on what you have both said, Fiona and Aimee, about your experiences and what you've come across. And they've said that they use it in palliative care social work. So presumably that's with adults, and they say that was a while ago when they were a practitioner, so possibly in a more strategic role now. But it's nice to see that we've got students, experienced social workers, and across the board on the call with us today from
I think
all over.
It's important to remember that, you know, yeah, the training gives us the grounding, but it doesn't mean we can't be creative. You know, you can make it whatever you want. You know, we all know that children communicate and talk to us in many different forms, and sometimes it's not by talking. So that gives us a whole wealth of opportunity, really, in terms of our communication methods. So be as creative as you like. Photography, you know, anything that you might have a passion for, or that your young people might, you'd be surprised how successful that can be.
Yes, and it's also interesting that people who've joined us today are talking about it not just with young adults and children, but with older people, palliative care, and all avenues of social work practice as well. Wonderful. Any final thoughts from either one of you while we're still together with a captive audience? Aimee, anything you'd like to say by way of sort of being part of today and your work in the future?
I just want to say thank you, really. Thank you for letting me be part of it and to share my poems. And like you say, you're going to share the contact details after, but I'd love for anybody to contact me if they want to talk about any of my poems in particular, or if they want to talk about having workshops, you know, anything. I'd welcome contact. So
I think the last thing I'd like to say, I think it was incredibly difficult doing this in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm sure sometimes staff thought, what is she asking me for that for? Why do they want to, you know, all that sort of, and so it's really easy to not do things. It's really easy to buckle, isn't it, and just not make that extra effort. But I knew there would be something incredible out of this, and I'm really proud of this and all the contributions the staff have made, and yeah, really proud. Well done, Wiltshire.
Well, it's been an utter delight to have both of you here on the call with us. Thank you. Our thanks to Samaya Sitayeb for her superb British Sign Language interpreting skills today. You've been a star. Thanks to everybody who joined us and watched the films and listened to the poetry. Aimee and Fiona, particular thanks to all of the contribution and material that you've brought today. Ian, thanks for doing a sterling job there. And I see that the survey has been posted in the chat. So please, for those of you who joined us today, if you're happy to fill that out, let us know what you thought, and enjoy the rest of Social Work Week. There's lots more happening and still some tickets left on some of the sessions that will be available up until an hour before they start. So have a look and see if there's anything more you want to join. But for now, that's the Poetry Recital and Reflections on a Pandemic by South Gloucestershire and Wiltshire. So thank you ever so much again, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.